Hello, welcome to the Royal Rota from ITV. It's your weekly roundup of all things royal, and we're here again as we are always at this time. It's Friday. Well, it's Friday when you get this. It's not right now, but
it's actually Thursday.
Anyway,
but it's Friday when you get it.
Yes, you all right? How's your week been?
Good.
Yes.
Good.
All right.
Seen some royals, haven't we? Been out and about.
Royals, been out and about. I've stood in the dark in Windsor a couple of times. Things happening in Windsor. One of them being the Queen. One of them being Prince Andrew, who was seen. Although we can't show you the picture of Prince Andrew, can we? Because we had to pay for it, so limited shelf life. But he has emerged from Royal Lodge. Yes, we don't have a budget on this podcast to buy certain pictures, but yeah, Prince Andrew was seen. There's been a big debate about Ukraine, which we will cover in some detail. International Women's Day, of course, as well.
Yep, the royal family marked that on social media, as they always do. Camilla held a reception, and the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge paid tribute.
Yeah, who was there? International woman? Yes, the Queen.
To some,
Granny.
But they also recognised some women that they've met over the last year, some of which we have also met, so we can run through some of those people.
Indeed so. More audiences at Buckingham Palace, but the Queen had her first in-person audience with Monsieur Trudeau.
She did.
Justin Trudeau of Canada.
This is her first in-person audience since she tested positive for COVID.
Yes.
So
I was going to start there, but I'm not.
You're not.
We're going to talk about Ukraine.
Well, that's good, because that's what I've got on top. So I didn't reshuffle quickly enough.
Oh, you didn't? Right, fine.
No.
So we will talk about the Queen momentarily. I've just come in here from writing a blog about what was it that Prince William said when he went to this Ukrainian centre. So should we give you some background, tell you what happened? We were there, so we kind of saw it with our own eyes. We didn't hear the conversation when it happened, but we've been back onto the camera and listened. So, but let's start at the very beginning. This is Wednesday afternoon. West London, Holland Park, I believe.
Yep.
The Ukrainian Cultural Centre doing an amazing job of marshalling and organising all the donations and supplies for Ukraine.
It was absolutely stuffed full with boxes and donations, first aid, medicine, food for babies and adults, military coats and socks. I mean, there were boxes everywhere, and they are shipping those boxes out constantly to Ukraine, aren't they, to help.
Was it one or two lorries per night? So a big truck, a big lorry filled with these boxes. And actually they were sort of telling us they were getting specific orders. It wasn't just, give us your old clothes, was it? It was actually, we need boots, we need protection vests, we need thermals because it's bloody cold there at the moment. And they were getting specific orders and then going off and trying to find them. Yeah,
and they're also taking, they've also got a sort of room to one side where they're taking calls from people, whether they're in UK or whether they're in Ukraine or overseas. Anybody needing assistance can call a helpline, and they will try and assist.
So William and Kate were there. They paid a visit to this centre. They also met the boss of the DEC appeal, the Disasters Emergency Committee appeal, of which Prince William is kind of president or patron or something, isn't he? But he's got an affiliation with the DEC.
And the DEC has raised an enormous amount of money in just a few days. Yesterday, when we asked, they were 132 million, but that is going up so rapidly that it will be...
Which they said was the biggest amount of money raised by the DEC since the tsunami in 2004, I think it was. So a phenomenal amount of cash that's been raised.
Just shows how people here want to help and want to do anything they can to help. And the royal family have also wanted to show their support and solidarity with the people of Ukraine, and we've seen them do various engagements now. But Kate and William had tweeted, hadn't they, about a week ago about showing their support for Ukraine, but this is their first public engagement on it.
And as we understand it, the Queen, Charles and Camilla, and William and Kate have all donated personally from their private incomes, whatever they are, but we run through them every so often, but not from their public funds, of course, but from their private incomes to the Disasters Emergency Committee appeal. So some of that 132 million has come from the Queen, Prince Charles and Prince William.
Yeah, they're personal donations, and they would never comment on how much
You do always wonder, though, don't you?
You do always wonder,
give?
yeah.
Yes, you do wonder. I wonder what is the amount that you give. Anyway, so in the course of that conversation that they were having, and they had lots of conversations, and I'll put my phone on silent because I should have done that before.
It would never be an episode without it going ding dong at some point.
Exactly. I'm just going to check to see if that isn't important. It's actually quite important, but we can't tell you about it.
Yeah. Oh, I think it's something that we've been looking forward to for a long time.
It is. Right. So we will read that when we've stopped recording this. But anyway, as part of that conversation, William had a conversation about war in Europe. Now, I suppose the context here is there has been some criticism of some media reporting that this war, because it's on the doorstep of the European Union, because it's happening in Europe, because it's not happening to people of colour, it's happening to white people, it's got a much higher prominence. People are saying this is, I don't know, there's been accusations that people are reporting this is worse because it's Europe. I mean, you know, people have to justify their own reporting. You have to be very careful about what you say, what you write. And there are, you know, it's true that there are some parts of the world that don't get reported as much as others. But in the context of all that, Prince William was having a conversation. Prince
William had a conversation. It was a conversation very early on in the visit when they'd just arrived and they'd gone in to see that call centre, the sort of nerve centre that I mentioned a little bit earlier. And the words that William actually said, I'll read them to you and then we can play them to you, were, "Everyone is horrified by what they are seeing. It's really horrifying. The news every day, it's almost unfathomable. For our generation, it's very alien to see this happening in Europe, but we're all right behind you. We're thinking about you. We feel so useless."
If we don't shelter our sky, it's going to be disaster in whole Europe. We've got Chernobyl, we've got Zaporizhia, which they are bomb shelling all the time. So
no, everyone's horrified by what they're seeing. They are really horrified. And the news every day is just it's almost infallible to actually witness it. Still, you know, for our generation, it's very alien to see this happen in Europe. But we're all right behind you, thinking about you guys a lot, and I know that all we can provide, we feel so useless we can provide words, but we are thinking about what happens.
So the reason Lizzie read that was actually because, as you probably just saw or heard, if you're listening or watching the podcast, I don't know how you consume this podcast, but William had his back to our camera at that point. It was quite a lot of not a lot of space in this place, was there? So it's a little bit difficult to hear, but yeah, that's the transcript. Lizzie's been through it. How many times have you listened to that this morning?
A fair few.
Yes, okay.
A fair few.
So because we thought this is an accurate transcript of what William said on our camera that was filmed contemporaneously at the time. Now, if you watch or listen or look at Twitter, as I sometimes am unfortunate enough to have to do, there are now people saying you've clipped this, you're trying to do Kensington Palace's work for them, where's the other version? Just the usual absolute nonsense that you get on Twitter of all these conspiracy theories. But that was the actual recording from our camera that we were with in that room at that time of what he actually said. The trouble is, it was kind of reported that he kind of mentioned that it was worse because it wasn't Africa and Asia.
And the other version that had gone out prior to this one didn't have, for our generation, it's very alien to see this happening in Europe. It had just referred to Africa, Asia. It's alien to see this happening in Europe. And you put that together and you come up with something entirely different.
But we couldn't find the words Africa or Asia. We had a very good listen, as we just told you, to what happened before that conversation and after that conversation as well. And couldn't hear it anywhere. So we've just played you the factual and accurate version of what happened. The trouble is there's been a bit of a storm overnight because of what was reported. And I suppose there is a question, like, is alien for this to happen in Europe? Well, not really, because the Balkans happened. You know, the war in the former Yugoslavia happened, you know, started in 1991, went through most of the 1990s, actually. But then if you take it in context of William saying for our generation, so he would have been, 9 when the Balkans War started, you know, you might kind of be aware of something in the news that your dad's watching or your mum's watching. But, you know, when he says his generation, I suspect the first war or invasion that he remembers is probably when he was in his early 20s, which would have been the Second Gulf War in 2003.
Yeah. And, you know, we talked about, we overheard another conversation he had, didn't we, about his own children asking questions, coming home from school, asking questions about this. They've been having conversations amongst their friends. Well, his children are under 10. Charlotte and George are
so they've
very
noticed
young,
it, or
and they
people at
have
school are
noticed
talking about
it,
yeah.
and
you would have thought,
will be aware of it.
William had an Eton education. He was, educated at one of the best educational establishments in the UK, and therefore he might have been expected, also because he's going to be a future king one day, might have been expected to know about a war in Europe when he was very young. But I suppose, if you're talking about in my generation, this is probably the first time he's really seen and consumed the news in this way of an invasion or a war happening in Europe.
And news is very different now, of course. His news is 24/7. It's on all sorts of platforms in a way it probably wasn't when William was young, which is maybe why his children are more aware and their friends are more aware and other children are more aware of what's going on.
But I think it's incumbent on us all to be very careful in our reporting. Is this suffering? And you just think about that. The bomb attack on that maternity hospital yesterday, absolutely abhorrent. There's no other word for it. And as terrible as that is, and the suffering, it is no worse than innocent people being killed in Afghanistan, innocent people being killed in Syria, many of them by Russian bombs as well. What about the genocide in Rwanda? I mean, innocent people losing their lives, because of that civil war. All war is horrible. All war is terrible. All war involves suffering and the killing of innocent people. And I think it's just important that we are careful with our language. And I think if you were to dissect William's words, he was pretty careful with his language, and he wasn't saying that, as far as we can tell, wasn't saying that this war in Europe is any worse than or the suffering is any greater because it's happening to Europeans rather than people in Africa or people in Asia.
Yeah, I mean, they were incredibly. They looked incredibly emotional, didn't they, throughout the visit?
Yes.
Very concerned.
Sure they would be,
and they talked about everyone being there for them, the Ukrainian spirit, telling them that keep together, everyone is there for you. But I think they just wanted to do whatever they could in some small way to show their support for the people of Ukraine.
Yeah, so let's park that issue. I think we've dissected that enough, but let's just listen to some of the other things that were said at the event. So this is the Ukrainian spirit, and I have to say I'll agree with William on this. What an amazing spirit that the people of Ukraine have had, and we wish them all the very best. I mean, I don't think in this particular situation we, as journalists, we want to report things fairly and accurately, but I think we can conclude here that the suffering is happening on the Ukrainian side, and the killing of innocents and non-combatants is happening in Ukraine at Ukrainians. So this is what William said about the spirit that he has noticed in the Ukrainian spirit, as he called it.
And we've seen a lot of that Ukrainian spirit already. And it is amazing. You've got a real sense of spirit about you.
And we spoke to some of the volunteers there as well. I mean, again, there is always that question. We dissected this last week about Prince Charles saying these words and how the royal family always have to be politically neutral, and they've kind of parked that neutrality in this particular instance. And one of the conversations we had was, yes, they're with us. They know the suffering is happening and they are with us.
Yeah, I mean, even they were wearing badges like you've got
I
on.
just picked up a badge as well.
Kate was in sort of a bluish teal kind of top, which is obviously a nod to the blue and the Ukrainian flag. They are very much there showing their solidarity and support for the people of Ukraine.
We are really blessed to have royals to support Ukraine. That sends the message to all the people around the world that the whole world stands with Ukraine.
And actually, when Kate turned up at this event, she had a little paper bag on her, and we what was in the paper bag? And we were then told what was in the paper bag.
Yeah, homemade brownies and granola bars, homemade at Kensington Palace. And Kate said that it was the least that they could do. So I think they wanted some small
homemade by Kate and the kids,
gesture.
or homemade by the kitchen staff. I don't think we'd ever quite work that one out. But,
we know that Kate
loves
to cook and to bake, so it really wouldn't. We don't know. I should make that clear.
Surprise you.
But it wouldn't surprise me. But a gesture.
You wanted to taste them, didn't you? And I did too. Because I can.
They smelt. Brownies smelt incredible, but they were for the volunteers, and they needed them.
Yes, there were some more important people than us.
100%. 100%.
They were much more deserving of Kate's brownies.
But I have a very sweet tooth and I love a chocolate brownie. They smelt incredible.
We should probably play the clip we mentioned earlier about William's children. This is what he said about, he was talking about George and Charlotte, because they're the two of his children who are at school, and this is what he said about the conversations they'd been having about Ukraine.
Ours have been coming home asking all about it, so they're obviously talking about it amongst their friends and still being talked about it. So it's just, like I said, it's choosing the words carefully to explain to them what's going on.
And they did promise that they'll be back to pack some boxes.
They did. They said...
Which is something they would do on a private basis rather than having people like us in tow.
Yeah, Kate said that near the end, before they were leaving, that she said, I think we need to come and help out, give you some respite. So, I think if they were to do that, it would possibly be, as you say, on a private basis, and we might never know. But they seemed, throughout the visit, incredibly keen to do whatever they could to help and show their support.
Talking of blue and yellow, which other royal person had some blue and yellow symbolism this week?
Now, nothing happens by accident in a
Nothing
royal
happens by
palace,
accident
do
in
they?
royal palaces.
Whether it's a brooch or a photograph or, in this case, some flowers. And the Queen held an audience with Justin Trudeau, as we mentioned earlier, and in the background were some flowers in blue and yellow.
Yes, I mean, have a look. If you're watching on YouTube, we are showing you these blue and yellow flowers right now. Some people said the Queen's dress was blue and yellow, but it was far too patterned for me to make that kind of...
The flowers definitely were, though.
Yeah, OK, the flowers are definitely blue and yellow. So if you're watching on YouTube, here they are. If you're not watching on YouTube, then you'll have to go to our social media pages to have a look at that. Mine is Chris Ship ITV on Twitter, and Lizzie is...
at Lizzie ITV.
It's also on Instagram, at ITV News Royals. Actually, it is on Instagram. Did I put it on? I'm trying to remember. There must have done. Here we go. Yes, it's there. There's the Queen. There's the Queen with Justin Trudeau. Justin Trudeau was in the UK seeing Boris Johnson. Now, obviously, the Queen is the Queen of Canada, not just the Queen of the Great Britain and Northern Ireland. She's the Queen of Canada and Australia and New Zealand, and we have this debate.
We talk about this all the time. Can you name all 14? It says 14 plus the United Kingdom. Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah. So this is his Queen as much as our Queen, and she was having a meeting with her Prime Minister of Canada.
And she's known him since he was a very small boy, hasn't she?
Because Pierre Trudeau, Justin Trudeau's father, was Prime Minister of Canada for most of the 1970s. I read there was some small moment when he was a leader of the opposition during that time. But anyway, most of the 1970s, it was Pierre Trudeau as the Prime Minister. So when the Queen saw her Prime Minister way back in the 1970s, there would have been this little boy running around. How was Justin Trudeau? About late 40s, I think. Yeah, so he's...
Well, and when he then held a press conference with our Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, later that day, and he was asked about the Queen.
I know, what word did he use? A very interesting word. Now, have you ever used this word before?
No, and I'm gonna take it slowly so I get it right. He said that I've had the particular privilege of having known Her Majesty for about 45 years now, since he was little. Yeah. And I can tell you that in my conversation with her this morning, she was as insightful and perspicacious as ever.
Perspicacious.
It basically means...
Does it mean sort of sharp and...
Yes, insightful and aware and knowledge.
How do you spell it?
Perspicacia.
Having a ready insight into and understanding of things. So
I had, insight.
Yeah. Perspicaciously is the adverb, and perspicaciousness is the noun. That's a long word, isn't it? Perspicaciousness. If you got that in a game of Scrabble.
I mean, I don't think I'd naturally use it, but it tripped off his tongue, no problem.
It's from the early 17th century, from the Latin perpicas.
Okay.
More information than you needed.
More information.
Say it. Let's hear Justin Trudeau say the word perspicacious.
Perspicacious.
Perspicaciously. We are perspicaciously going to listen to Justin Trudeau say the word perspicacious.
In regards to Her Majesty, I have the particular privilege of having known Her Majesty for about 45 years now. And I can tell you that in my conversation with her this morning, she was as insightful and perspicacious as ever, very interested in what's going on, asked me all sorts of questions about Canada, and we had a really useful, for me anyway, conversation about global events, as we always do.
There we go. I think you'll believe that you'll note that he said it much better than I did. But then he's a Prime Minister of a country and I'm not.
So a conversation about global events. And he said on his Twitter later that they spoke about Ukraine as you would expect.
Yes, and that conversation would have come up. And the Queen hasn't actually spoken about Ukraine, but she does things through actions rather than words. And in this case,
Symbolism.
flowers. And as we mentioned earlier, she has given this personal donation to the Disasters Emergency Committee appeal. Someone else was at Windsor this week seeing the Queen. I wonder whether she had blue and yellow flowers behind her for seeing her son, Prince Andrew.
Yes, Prince Andrew. He was.
Or did she have something else for him?
He was photographed for the first time this week since we found out that he was going to settle his out-of-court settlement with Virginia Giuffre. He was spotted driving up towards the castle, wasn't he?
Yes, so Prince Andrew lives in Royal Lodge, which is a house on the Windsor estate, and therefore you drive from there up to the actual castle to see Mum, the Queen. And it just so happened that he did that on the day that a Judge Kaplan, Lewis A. Kaplan, isn't it? Judge Lewis A. Kaplan, put his signature. Here we go, here's the signature and a picture of it if you're watching on YouTube, because I did put this on my Twitter feed earlier this week. This is Lewis A. Kaplan's signature on a stipulation of dismissal, which is basically saying the whole damn thing is over.
So, yeah, we knew that they'd agreed to this out-of-court settlement, but this is it. It's officially happened, signed off, case dismissed. I think they had until about March the 17th, and they did it on March the 8th. And
which basically means he's given Virginia the reported 10 to 12 million pounds.
Yep.
Jesus. There have been some reports, again, not confirmed by any member of the household, that Prince Charles has lent some of this money to his brother, or there were earlier reports the Queen had made a donation herself to Virginia Giuffre's charity, but refused to give any money to her.
But I think whatever
reports, I can't talk about their
whether they have or they haven't. It's not going to have come from the public purse. It will come from their own private money if they've helped.
Which is a reminder, I think, as some commentators were talking about a couple of weeks ago, it's a reminder of that, this option of settling for vast sums of money is only open to the elite and those who have this kind of wealth.
Yep.
And it's a reminder that the royal family is in that bracket, whether they like it or not.
Yeah, but they will be breathing a sigh of relief, I imagine, that this is over, because reputationally it's been a bit of a disaster.
Well, it has been and will continue to be, and there's no way back for Prince Andrew. I mean, his reputation is in absolute tatters because, remember that there's no liability with this out-of-court settlement, but neither has he actually cleared his name in a court as he said he wanted to do. So, you sign an out-of-court settlement, there is no admission of liability whatsoever in it. But then he hasn't been to court in the way in which he said he wanted to do.
Yep. Interestingly, on the court document, on the order, it says that each party to bear his own costs and fees.
So on top of the £12 million, you've got to pay his lawyers and the court costs and all the rest of it. And Virginia will pay hers out of her pot of money.
Yeah. But that's it. It's over. Officially.
No more Prince Andrew legal chat on this podcast. You might be relieved to hear, or you might be disappointed in the outcome. But either way, that's what happens. It's how 98% of lawsuits end in America, so not that unusual at all.
Civil
sorry,
lawsuits.
what did I say? Civil lawsuits.
Just lawsuits, yeah.
Civil lawsuits end in America. So not unusual, but it's over. Done. Should we tick it off the list? There you go. No more. Andrew's kind of ticked off the list in every way, isn't he? Not royal, no court case. What's he going to do?
Well, exactly.
What do you do when you're Prince Andrew? Got no job, got no role, got no purpose.
And it'll be interesting to see. We've got the Duke of Edinburgh's service of Thanksgiving coming up. That's on March the 29th. Will he go?
I think personally they would be absolutely stupid to allow him to go, to be quite honest with you. I know that was his father and he wants to sort of pay his respects to his father at this Thanksgiving, but I mean, what are we all going to be talking about if Prince Andrew goes? And that is the problem that they've got ongoing. But anyway, if the royal family want to be stupid, they will be, but that's their choice. We will see on Monday. So this Commonwealth service is on Monday.
No, wait. The Commonwealth Day service is on Monday. Service of Thanksgiving for the Duke of Edinburgh is on the 29th.
Right, okay.
But we can talk about the Commonwealth Day service if you like.
Commonwealth Day service, which Prince Andrew probably not going to.
No.
Yes, the Duke of Edinburgh. Sorry, the Duke of Edinburgh's happens at the same establishment, Westminster Abbey.
Yeah.
That's what's got me confused. The Duke of Edinburgh's thing is later in March, towards the end of March. The Commonwealth Day service is on Monday. We don't yet know where the Queen is going.
Queen hopes to attend.
Hopes to attend.
Other
Then
members.
she hoped to attend the Cenotaph on Remembrance Sunday and didn't.
Yeah, I mean, Cenotaph, Commonwealth Day services, these are very, very important dates in the Queen's diary, and she will want to do everything she can to be there, and we very much hope to see her there. Other members of the royal family will be attending, including Prince of Wales, Duchess of Cornwall and the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge.
Am I right in thinking this is the first one that they've had since pre-COVID?
Yeah, so it's first one since
Wasn't there like a
2020,
hybrid one last year or virtual one or something?
but this is the first in-person one since 2020.
So the last one was the one that Harry and Meghan went to?
Yes.
Right.
That was their last public appearance or engagement before they left.
Here's a reminder, if you want some pictures of Harry and Meghan at that event. Remember Meghan was in that sort of bright green outfit, wasn't she? It was basically, I think they left that Commonwealth Day service, got on a plane and went to America, didn't they, that afternoon?
Yep.
Blimey, what a long time that's been. Funny enough, talking of Harry and Meghan, it's been a year now, almost a year to the day, because I know Piers Morgan was tweeting about how it was a year to the day since he stormed off the set of Good Morning Britain. That was the longest breakfast show of my life, having been on that programme, or the one on the Monday. A year since Oprah.
I know.
Wow.
What a lot has happened in a year. I was thinking, God, is it only a year? I thought it feels like a lot longer.
I mean, at the time, the Duke of Edinburgh was still alive, although in hospital, I think, at the time.
Yeah, he was.
Quite a lot has happened in the past year. A year since Oprah, and also, therefore, a year and a bit since Buckingham Palace launched this bullying investigation after the complaints about Meghan Markle's behaviour. I haven't seen a hide or hair of that, have you?
No, we haven't. And still no decision on whether they will be attending the Duke of Edinburgh's service of Thanksgiving.
There we are. Right.
We will keep asking the questions.
We'll keep asking the questions. I thought that on International Women's Day it was quite a powerful moment. You know what Camilla, the Duchess of Cornwall, does for this particular cause, but also for domestic violence and all those things as well. But she held a reception at Clarence House on International Women's Day. She gave a speech, which we will play to you in just a moment. But had she been unable to give that speech, someone else could have given it on her behalf.
They could. Duchess of Cornwall held a reception in her role as President of Women of the World.
Wow Global.
Wow, yeah. And actually she joked about what you're referring to. As part of the reception, the actress Emerald Fennell, who plays the Duchess of Cornwall in The Crown, was there.
So we're talking about the young Camilla Parker Bowles,
Yeah.
In the lead up to Charles and Di's wedding, that kind of, all the stuff in The Crown.
And
some of it was factual, some of it, of course, don't remember, we all should point out The Crown is not a documentary, a lot of it is fiction.
And at the start of her speech, Camilla said if she were to fall off her perch, there would be somebody that could step in and take over the reins.
It's very reassuring to know that if I should fall off my perch at any moment, my fictional alter ego is here to take over. So, Emerald, be prepared.
Emerald Fennell didn't have her sort of Camilla haircut or anything. She looked very different, actually. Here's a photo of the two of them having a chat, and they look quite different, don't they?
Yeah, they do. But I thought
in The Crown,
amusing of Camilla to gesture to it in her speech.
And the speech had also mentioned Ukraine as well.
Yeah, she spoke about the heartbreaking conditions in Ukraine where democracy and freedom are under attack.
Stories have power, and I very much hope that you've been able to speak to Fawzia, Ferazan and Alia, to hear them describe what life has been like for female judges in Afghanistan, and to Inna about the heartbreaking conditions in Ukraine, where democracy and freedom are under brutal attack. Their stories of the humanity behind the headlines are unbearably moving. But they must, and they do, have the power to stir us to action.
Now, actually, someone we've seen quite a lot at recent events is the wife of the ambassador, the Ukrainian ambassador to the UK, Inna Prostenko is her name?
It's her name, yeah.
And she, as you recall, the Ukrainian ambassador to the UK had that standing ovation in the House of Commons. He was also in the House of Commons when President Zelensky of Ukraine addressed the MPs in that historic video call the other day. But we've seen his wife at a lot of these events. She was at Charles and Camilla's event at the Cathedral last week. She was at William and Kate's event that we were at yesterday, and she went to Camilla's as well, and has been receiving lots of attention and affection, it would be fair to say, from everyone here.
Yeah. Actually, we can show you pictures that were on the Kensington Palace social media this morning of Kate giving her a really warm hug yesterday when they met at the Cultural Centre. But she gave a very moving speech, didn't she, at the reception on International Women's Day.
In Ukraine, we have always seen the 8th of March as a bright and tender holiday, full of flowers, sweet treats, and most of all, happy women's faces. Today there are no smiles and no peace, just horror and sorrow in the eyes of every Ukrainian woman, mother and wife. We had been building our beautiful, blooming, independent country for 30 years, until one day Russia decided to destroy the whole country because of the deranged leaders' whim. Now we have to count the death toll of our people and watch the frightened, crying children who are forced to flee their native land with their mothers and sisters, leaving their fathers to defend our country. I pray that God protect all the women of the world from all kinds of suffering that Ukrainian women have been experiencing from the start of this horrible war. I pray to God that our children never part with their parents because of war and do not grow up in foreign lands. War means grief and death, tears and ruins, while we women are worse of living in peace and care, in loving, comfortable homes, and among our entire families. We are truly grateful to the British royal family, to their strong and touching support of Ukraine, Her Majesty the Queen, for their generous donation to Ukraine, the Royal Highnesses, the Prince of Wales and the Duchess of Cornwall, for expressing support and meeting with representatives of the Ukrainian community and volunteers. With all your support, we will win. Thank you.
So we began and we end with Ukraine, which is perfectly appropriate given the dreadful events that are still unfolding. What now? 2 weeks into this Russian invasion of Ukraine, and the involvement of the royals in that, not uncontroversially, as we mentioned at the very top. Although I hope we've managed to set the record straight on that particular one.
I hope so.
Yes.
And coming up next week,
Commonwealth Day.
Commonwealth Day we've spoken about. BAFTA is on Sunday.
Yes, that Prince William's not going.
Prince William's not going. President of BAFTA, isn't he?
Yeah, president of BAFTA. You only have one event every year. He went to BAFTA to open their headquarters.
The BAFTA HQ, yeah. And he normally attends. Actually, we can show you some pictures of him last attending BAFTA together.
But not this year.
But not this year. He's going to make a video address.
No one will tell us why he's not going, but
diary constraints.
Okay. And then just after that, later in the week, there's a trip to the Caribbean.
There's a trip to the Caribbean to be had, yes.
Right, okay. So we will see you next week. Thank you for continuing to watch and listen to us. We appreciate every single one of your listens and watches, and we'll see you on the Royal Rota next week.